I received the divorce papers via text message while I was still in the dust and heat of Afghanistan. 13 years of marriage ended with a PDF attachment. My name is Mason, 40 years old, Major with the 75th Ranger Regiment. I'd been in Bagram for just over 3 months when Victoria decided she was done waiting. The text message subject line read simply, "We need to handle this like adults." The message itself was barely 4 sentences long. She'd already filed the paperwork. She'd already emptied our joint account. She'd already moved her new boyfriend Tyler into our house in Colorado Springs. And she hoped I would be reasonable about everything. I read the message 3 times, closed my phone, took a shower in the communal facilities, got dressed for my shift, and said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my quarters that night, I replied with one word, "Noted." That was it. No argument, no begging, no threats. Rodriguez, my second in command, noticed something was off during briefing the next morning. "Everything good, sir?" he asked when the others had filed out. "Yeah," I said, organizing papers that didn't need organizing. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded once and that was the end of it. Military guys know when to leave things alone. Truth is, I wasn't surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had started changing. Small things at first. Victoria stopped asking about my day. Started working late at the marketing firm where she was an account executive. Started going to yoga classes 3 times a week but never seemed to get any more flexible. New clothes. New friends I never met. New passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her. Didn't start checking her messages or following her around. That's not who I am. But I wasn't blind either. So I made some quiet moves of my own. Nothing dramatic, just precautions. I secured important documents in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Birth certificate, marriage license, house deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan, military benefits paperwork. I moved my father's vintage Rolex and my grandmother's silver collection to the same box. Things that mattered. I also opened a separate account at a different bank and started diverting part of my pay there. Not enough that she'd notice, but enough that I wouldn't be starting from zero if things went south. The night before I deployed, Victoria hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe. Okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a colleague, not a husband heading to a war zone. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I'd prepared for this moment. And what she didn't understand was that I never start fights. But I do finish them. I met Victoria at a charity gala in 2010. I was home between tours, attending with some fellow officers. She was working the event, representing her marketing firm. Stunning in a blue dress. Intelligent. Ambitious. We were married 8 months later. Victoria used to say she was proud of my service, though she never quite understood it. Her father was a corporate attorney, her brother a surgeon. No military in her family. She'd sometimes ask when I was going to transition to civilian life, not realizing that after 15 years the Army was my career, not just something I was doing until something better came along. We bought our house in 2014. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 4 bedrooms, decent yard, quiet neighborhood with other military families. My name was the only one on the mortgage since the VA loan was in my name, but I added her to the deed because that's what married people do. They share things. My father died 2 years after we got married, heart attack while hiking, his favorite activity. My mother passed 3 years later, complications from surgery. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough that Victoria and I could pay off our student loans and still have a cushion. I deployed 5 times during our marriage. Iraq twice, Afghanistan 3 times. Each time I came home, Victoria seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, like she was playing a role she'd outgrown. I didn't sign up to be a military wife, she told me once after I mentioned possibly extending my service commitment. I'm tired of being alone all the time. I understood that, I did. But the Army was the only place I ever felt like I truly belonged. I was good at my job. People depended on me. In 2022, things started changing more noticeably. Victoria got irritated when I called during her girls' nights. Started talking about how her friend Audrey had divorced her husband and was living her best life now. Started making comments about how we didn't really have anything in common anymore. I suggested counseling. She said we were fine, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I'd never met, the new clothes, the gym membership she rarely used. I should have confronted her, but that's not how I handle things. Never have been. My father taught me to think before I speak, to be sure before I act. So I watched and I prepared quietly, because my gut was telling me something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after getting the divorce text, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. A notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal, $92, 400, almost everything that was left. I set my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance was down to $17.53. Our savings, $56,000 we'd built up over years, was gone completely, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Carter, one of the lieutenants from my unit, glanced over. "Bad news, sir?" I locked my phone. "Nah, just some account stuff." That night, I called our bank from the base communication center. Turned out Victoria had been moving money for weeks. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. The big transfers started the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching soldiers laughing, calling their kids, their wives, their parents. Normal life happening all around me while mine was burning down. That's when Rodriguez found me. "Heard from Jenkins that you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he said. "What's up?" I don't usually share personal stuff, but Rodriguez had pulled me out of a bad situation in Kandahar once. I trusted him. "My wife emptied our accounts and moved her new boyfriend into our house," I said. "Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week." Rodriguez didn't give me the usual, "I'm sorry," or "That's rough," or "You'll find someone better." He just asked, "What's your plan?" "Not sure yet," I said. He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That night I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system. Something Victoria probably forgot I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange truck in our driveway. A man I'd never seen before walking our dog, using my coffee mug, wearing my Air Force Academy sweatshirt. And there was Victoria, laughing in the kitchen. I'd renovated myself during my last leave. Something shifted inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder, clearer. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone. Made a list. Call Ryan, Army buddy who became a lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact Colonel about emergency leave. A review home refinance documents. Something Victoria mentioned casually last year. Check the security on my military pension accounts. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused, like I was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion now. This was about strategy. At 0500, before my shift started, I sent an email to Ryan with the subject line, "Need legal help. Discreet and urgent." His reply came an hour later. "Call me. Secure line only." When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I didn't even need to confront her. I just needed to wait and watch and let her own actions become the trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Victoria I was coming home. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just checked into a hotel in downtown Colorado Springs under a different name and contacted Ryan. We met at a diner 15 miles outside of town. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth. "Feel like it too," I replied. Ryan handed me a folder. Everything we discussed. The house deed, loan documents, bank statements. And this. He pulled out a separate paper. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances. It was a refinance application with my signature on it, except it wasn't my signature. Not quite. Someone had tried to copy it but missed details. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern wasn't mine." "Victoria did this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Ryan nodded. 3 months ago. Used the equity to pull out $350,000. Your signature is required for that since the VA loan is in your name only. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clear out our accounts and divorce me, I said. Busy woman. It gets better, Ryan said. She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. Tyler's got a record, 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2020. I took a deep breath. What are my options? Several, Ryan said. But first, you need to decide what you want. I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. Ryan smiled. Then here's what we do. The next day, I drove past our house. Tyler's truck was gone, but Victoria's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while. Thought about knocking on the door, confronting her, but that wasn't the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank, met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance, showed him my military ID, showed him the real signature on my driver's license, showed him the forged documents. His face went pale. I'll need to report this immediately. I understand, I said. I've already filed a police report. That night, I got a text from Victoria. Who have you been talking to at the bank? Tyler said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office, filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud, registered formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Victoria called. I let it go to voicemail. Mason, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults. Like adults. The same words from her text. I still didn't respond. Ryan called that afternoon. They froze the refinance money. And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The one in your name. Yeah. He got pulled over this morning, driving on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle. Good, I said. He also had some interesting things in the truck. Prescription pads from the marketing firm where Victoria works. They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads? Looks that way. The police are investigating. I hung up and sat on the edge of the hotel bed. This was getting bigger than I'd expected. Part of me wanted to call Victoria, warn her, old habits. But then I remembered the security camera footage. My house, my dog, my life, given away like it meant nothing. No, this was the path now. Couldn't turn back. And honestly, I didn't want to. 1 week after returning to Colorado, I sat in a nondescript conference room at the regional FBI office. Across from me was Agent Pearson, a former Marine with salt and pepper hair and a demeanor that suggested he'd seen it all. Major Collins, he said, sliding a folder across the table. We appreciate you coming in. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, not mine, but transactions showing transfers from multiple accounts to something called ZB Holdings. What am I looking at? I asked. Money trail, Pearson said. Your wife's boyfriend, Tyler Reeves, has been working with someone named Zachary Bennett. They've been targeting military families for the past 3 years. I stared at the papers. Targeting how? The scam works like this. They identify active duty personnel who are about to deploy. They make contact with the spouse left behind. Tyler's job is to seduce the wife, or in 2 cases, the husband, gain their trust, and eventually access to financial information. My stomach tightened. And Zachary Bennett? Real estate agent. Once Tyler has the spouse's trust, Bennett steps in with a great investment opportunity. They convince the spouse to refinance the home, often forging the deployed service member's signature. The money gets transferred to shell companies, then disappears. I thought about Victoria. And the spouse? Are they victims or accomplices? Pearson's expression softened slightly. Depends. Some are completely duped. Others, well, they know something's not right, but they look the other way. A few are active participants. And Victoria? We're still determining that. But I'll be straight with you, it doesn't look good. The timeline suggests she knew Tyler before your deployment. There are text messages between them going back 8 months. 8 months. While I was still home. While we were still sharing a bed. We've been tracking Bennett for a while, Pearson continued. Your case broke it open because you caught the forgery quickly and had security cameras in your home. Most victims don't discover the fraud until they return from deployment, by which time the money's long gone. I nodded, processing this information. How many families? 17 that we've confirmed. Possibly more. 17 families. 17 soldiers serving their country while being robbed blind. The cold focus I'd been maintaining suddenly burned hot. What do you need from me? I asked. We need to catch them in the act. Your home security system might be our best shot. That afternoon, I met with a bank fraud investigator named Melissa Chin. She spread documents across a table in her office. The money from your refinance, $350,000, was initially deposited in your joint account, she explained. From there, $220,000 was transferred to an account under the name Zachary Bennett at First Colorado Bank. The remaining $130,000 went to 3 different accounts under Victoria's name. And the money from our savings? I asked. Split between Victoria's personal accounts and cash withdrawals. We can trace the electronic transfers, but not the cash. I rubbed my temples. So Victoria kept some for herself and gave the rest to Bennett? That's what it looks like, Chin said. And this pattern matches other cases we're seeing. As I left the bank, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Mason, please call me. I can explain everything. Tyler isn't who you think he is. I made a terrible mistake. I showed the message to Ryan when we met for dinner that night. She's panicking, he said. The bank's investigation must have tipped her off. Or Tyler, I suggested. Maybe he's cutting her loose now that things are heating up. Ryan nodded. Either way, don't respond. Not yet. The next morning, I received a call from Agent Pearson. We've been monitoring Bennett's communications. He's planning to meet Tyler at your house tomorrow to collect documents. We think it's the refinance paperwork. I'll make sure the security cameras are working, I said. There's more, Pearson added. We've linked Bennett to similar scams in Texas near Fort Hood and in North Carolina near Camp Lejeune. This is bigger than we thought. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the other families, the other soldiers who'd come home to find their lives in ruins. I thought about Victoria. Had she been a willing participant from the beginning, or had she been manipulated? Did it even matter anymore? At 3 a.m., I checked the home security app on my phone. Through the kitchen camera, I could see Victoria sitting at the table, head in her hands, crying. For a moment, I felt a pang of something, not quite sympathy, maybe just the ghost of what we'd once had. Then Tyler walked into frame, put his hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him, and he said something I couldn't hear. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and stood up. They walked out of the kitchen together, his arm around her waist. Whatever doubt I'd felt vanished. The next day, I met with Agent Pearson and his team. They set up additional surveillance equipment that would feed directly to their systems. I gave them access to all my security cameras and the alarm codes. We'll have agents positioned around the neighborhood, Pearson explained. Once we have Bennett and Tyler discussing the fraud on camera, we move in. And Victoria? I asked. Pearson's expression was carefully neutral. That depends on what we hear. At 2 p.m., the security app alerted me to movement at the front door. I was sitting in an FBI surveillance van 2 blocks away, watching with Pearson and another agent. Tyler opened the door to a man in a crisp suit. Zachary Bennett. They shook hands like old friends. Audio's clear, the tech agent said, adjusting something on his laptop. Bennett's voice came through the speakers. Is Victoria here? No, Tyler replied. She's at work. Better that way. She's getting nervous. She should be, Bennett said, following Tyler into the kitchen. This is a federal offense. Forging military documents, wire fraud, identity theft. She's looking at serious time if this goes south. My heart pounded as I watched them sit at my kitchen table. The same table where Victoria and I had shared countless meals, made plans for our future. I've got buyers for the house, Bennett continued, pulling out papers. Once we transfer the title, we can move the remaining money offshore. I've already got most of the refinance cash secured. What about Collins? Tyler asked. He's back in the country. The bank called Victoria yesterday. Bennett waved dismissively. By the time he figures it all out, the house will be sold and the money will be gone. These military guys are so trusting. It's almost too easy. Pearson touched his earpiece. We've got enough. Moving in. What happened next was a blur of activity. FBI agents swarmed the house. Tyler and Bennett were handcuffed in my kitchen. I watched it all unfold on the security feed, feeling strangely detached. As they were being led to separate cars, Victoria's Audi pulled into the driveway. She got out, froze at the sight of FBI jackets, then saw me stepping out of the surveillance van. Our eyes met across the lawn. Her face went through a series of emotions: shock, fear, and finally, something that looked like resignation. "Mason," she said as I approached. "I can explain." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd married. The woman I'd loved. The woman who had systematically dismantled our life together. "No need," I said quietly. "You already have." Agent Pearson came over. "Mrs. Collins, we need to ask you some questions about your involvement with Zachary Bennett and the refinancing of this property." Victoria's eyes darted between us. I didn't know what they were doing. Tyler said it was just a better interest rate. I would never. "Save it for the interview," Pearson said, not unkindly. "We have the text messages, Mrs. Collins. All of them." As they led her to another car, she looked back at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The federal courthouse was quieter than I expected. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, watching as Victoria, Tyler, and Bennett were brought in separately. It had been 3 months since the arrests, and today was the sentencing hearing. My attorney, Ryan, sat beside me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Just want it to be over." The proceedings moved quickly. Bennett, as the ringleader, received 18 years for fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and identity theft. The prosecutor revealed that his scheme had stolen over $4.2 million from military families across 5 states. Tyler was next. He'd taken a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Bennett in exchange for a reduced sentence. Still, he got 8 years for his role in the conspiracy. Then it was Victoria's turn. She stood as the judge addressed her, wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Mrs. Collins," the judge said, "this court has reviewed your plea agreement and the evidence presented. While you claim you were manipulated by Mr. Reeves and Mr. Bennett, the evidence shows you were an active participant in this scheme. Text messages indicate you knew of their intentions months before your husband's deployment." Victoria's shoulders slumped slightly. "Furthermore, you personally benefited from the fraud, using stolen funds for personal expenses and luxury purchases. This court cannot overlook the particular cruelty of targeting your own husband while he served his country overseas." The judge paused, looking down at his notes. "However, the court acknowledges your cooperation with authorities since your arrest, which has helped identify other victims. I hereby sentence you to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $487,000. I felt nothing as the gavel came down. No satisfaction, no vindication, no closure. Just emptiness. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Ryan guided me through them with practiced efficiency, deflecting questions with no comment until we reached his car. "That's it," he said as we drove away. "Civil case is settled, criminal case is done. You've got the house back free and clear, and the bank has restored most of your funds under their fraud protection policy." "What about the other families?" I asked. "The FBI has recovered about 60% of the stolen money. The rest is probably gone for good. But the restitution orders mean the victims will eventually get most of it back, even if it takes years." I nodded, looking out the window at the mountains in the distance. "I want to help them," Ryan glanced over. The other victims? Yeah. Set up some kind of support group or fund. Something to help them rebuild while they wait for restitution. Ryan smiled slightly. Always the commander, looking out for your people. They're not my people, but they could have been. 2 weeks later, I stood in my empty house. I decided to sell it. Too many memories, too much pain embedded in the walls. The real estate agent had found a buyer, another military family transferring to Peterson Space Force Base. As I walked through the rooms one last time, my phone rang. It was Colonel Westfield, my former commanding officer. "Mason," he said when I answered. "How are you holding up?" "I'm good, sir. Just finishing up here before heading east." "About that, I've been talking with General Hayes about your situation. There's a position opening up at the Pentagon. Strategic planning, working with Joint Special Operations. Your experience would be valuable." I paused, surprised. I thought my career was effectively over after all this. Quite the opposite. The way you handled this situation, methodical, controlled, by the book even when it was personal, that's exactly the kind of officer we need. Plus, the fact that you've started that foundation for the other victims. Well, it speaks to your character. The Military Family Fraud Recovery Foundation. I'd used part of my savings to establish it, working with the FBI Victim Services to identify families affected by Bennett's scheme and others like it. I appreciate the offer, sir. When would you need an answer? Take a week. Think it over. But Mason, don't let what happened define the rest of your life. You've got a lot more to give. After we hung up, I walked out to the backyard. The garden Victoria had planted was overgrown now, but some of the perennials were still fighting through the weeds. Life persisting despite neglect. My phone buzzed with a text from Rodriguez. "Heard about the Pentagon offer. You taking it?" I hadn't told anyone about the call yet. Military grapevine was as efficient as ever. Before I could respond, another text came through. "Some of us are meeting at O'Malley's tonight. 1900. Come if you want." I looked around the empty yard, then back at the house that was no longer home. I typed back, "I'll be there." That evening, as I walked into O'Malley's, I was surprised to find not just Rodriguez, but 6 other officers from my former unit, all in civilian clothes, all raising their glasses as I approached. "The Major arrives," Rodriguez announced, sliding a beer toward me. "Not your Major anymore," I reminded him. "Once our Major, always our Major," another voice said. It was Jenkins, who'd served under me for 3 tours. I took the beer and sat down, feeling something loosen in my chest for the first time in months. "So," Rodriguez said after a while, "Pentagon, huh? Moving up in the world." I shrugged. "Haven't decided yet." "Take it," Jenkins said. "DC's full of single women who love a man in uniform." The table laughed, and I managed to smile. Dating was the last thing on my mind. "Seriously though," Rodriguez said, leaning in, "what's holding you back?" I considered the question. Not sure I'm ready to jump back in. Thought about trying civilian life for a while. Rodriguez nodded. "Fair enough. But remember what you told me in Kandahar? After that ambush when you got hit?" I remembered. I'd taken shrapnel to the leg, nothing serious, but enough to have me laid up for a week. "You said, 'The only way forward is forward,'" Rodriguez continued. "You were talking about the mission, but maybe it applies here too." The conversation shifted to other topics, sports, movies, base gossip. For a few hours, I wasn't the officer whose wife had betrayed him. I was just one of the guys. As the night wound down, Rodriguez walked me to my car. "Whatever you decide about the Pentagon," he said, "don't disappear on us. The unit needs people like you, even if it's just to call and check in sometimes." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "I won't." The next morning, I woke early and drove to Garden of the Gods Park. I hiked to a viewpoint overlooking the red rock formations. The city spread out below, Pikes Peak looming in the distance. I thought about Victoria sitting in a federal prison cell. I thought about the house soon to belong to another family. I thought about the Pentagon offer and what it might mean. Most of all, I thought about identity, who I was before all this and who I might become now. My phone buzzed. An email from the foundation's lawyer. 3 more families had been identified as victims of a similar scam in San Diego. The foundation could help them with immediate expenses while the legal process unfolded. I typed a quick response authorizing the funds, then put my phone away and looked back at the view. The only way forward is forward. I took a deep breath of the clear mountain air and made my decision.